NVIDIA and their fake press conference that they apparently ran back in April at SIGGRAPH just yesterday or the day before. They announced that an entire press conference that they released back in April was fake. That it was, well, not all the footage, but like Jensen in his kitchen, if we get to it, which may have only even been this one scene. Yeah, this is the presentation they just released. We can scroll through here. Hello? There it is. This was all synthetically generated for the press conference that they held in April. No one caught on to it. No one even pointed it out, apparently, at least in a way that gained mainstream attention. But they completely recreated his kitchen scene using their new tools. And then they generated a fake Jensen. And it looked believable enough that everyone fell for it. So, something I want to discuss with this, because this is super impressive. This is mind-boggling. We are entering an era of questioning whether anything we see is real. But something worth considering, and also the detail that they went to recreate his freaking kitchen is insane. Like, none of that was necessary. They didn't need those internal pieces, but they're there. They made them. Because, whatever. But something worth considering in this particular instance here is that this kind of thing is only doable when you only have short scenes, like that transition where they exploded his whole kitchen and all of that. The same thing applies to movies, TV shows, etc. Like, people often complain that movies have too much CGI these days, or TV shows do. But in reality, there is exponentially more CGI than you ever possibly notice in a movie or TV show, because so many elements are being controlled and manipulated, and you just don't notice it because you're not looking for it. And especially when it's small individual scenes, like I could totally have planted a CGI generated scene of this right now in one of these cuts, in one of these takes, while I'm talking about a subject. And when you're focused on the news part and the transitions and me just talking for a minute, you're not looking for those fine details and noticing which aspects might be fake or real, versus having an entire face-to-face conversation or an entire like drawn out scene with those particular details involved. Once your eyes are settled and used to looking at the same thing over and over, or once you're trying to do it in a more one-on-one presentation where those rigs are insane, but more one-on-one presentation where, you know, you're actually expecting to see a human being, you can start to notice more of that stuff. But, you know, when you have individual scenes and small clips where you're not primed to expect deceit, basically, it is a lot easier to quickly convey what feels like reality with fake information. And I think that's really important to consider. The only CGI Jensen is 102.41 to 102.45. Oh, okay. Well, the original headlines they were putting out was that the whole thing was fake. Regardless, there was a bit that fake that no one really caught. Which is why I'm pointing out, like, that's the whole point of me pointing out, like, this explanation, is if we had an hour-long, like, just zoomed in on him talking, eventually you'd start looking at his face, you'd get comfortable with the uncanny valley enough that you would start to notice, okay, wait a minute, that little aspect isn't right, that little aspect isn't right, whatever, and start to pick up on cues for it. Where when it is this one random scene kind of inserted among the rest, you can start to improve it. And you think back to examples like in Rogue One with Princess Leia and things like that, where you are close but not quite there, but realistically, had they had like flashbacks of the original movies or something, or of additional footage of a young Carrie Fisher, and they could match the filming exact, which obviously wouldn't be the case because we're going back decades, but if they had, say, a young Carrie Fisher existed and then stopped existing, and they had that footage, and then they inserted that CGI scene among the real footage with a little bit of tweaking, you could create scenes that supplement real scenes that you actually shot and be a ton less noticeable. Whereas crafting something that hasn't existed, or, something that is a little less believable or hasn't been done before is a lot harder to convert or convince people that it's real. And I think we're going to see a lot of weirdness. Like, this is entering the era once this technology becomes more accessible. I'm excited for it because I think the exploration of avatars and of virtual personalities is going to explode, and there's going to be a ton that comes with that we haven't even begun to scratch the surface of. But I think we're going to see some issues where people try to alter history or alter presentations, where you can take something that was shot where most of it is real, but a couple sentences or a scene or a cut of it isn't real. And when you insert that into the rest of it, the person on the other end doesn't necessarily have a reason to believe that they are being lied to or manipulated in that regard. And I think the implications from there are a little funky, and I don't know. The pickups in Black Widow are being down to CGI due to injuries, purely for the purpose of being able to undercut and ununionize CG artists. Yeah, like... And that's the issue. Like, in some of the movie trailers for Black Widow, I haven't seen the actual film yet, but in some of the movie trailers, they had the one where she, like, spins as she drops down, and that looks as CGI as it gets until she starts walking forward. And it's one of those things, like, when I'm given that scene on its own through Twitter, for whatever reason, Twitter compression on top, there's a couple things that make CGI more obvious. Twitter compression, or just, video compression in general, and slow-mo. And when you slow a clip down, suddenly green screens or CGI bits somehow become a ton more obvious. But also, sometimes through Twitter compression, it looks a lot less convincing than it does when you're watching the movie through YouTube or just a Blu-ray or something, which is really weird. But we are getting to the point when it comes to head-on talking head stuff that it's a lot more convincing. I think when we're doing crazy action scenes like Scarlett Johansson twirling down onto the ground and then walking away from an explosion, that's such a disconnect from reality that we're still going to be more primed to, like, expect it.